Hi, everyone, and thank you all so much for tuning in. I am so excited for you to meet my guest today. Her name is Dr. Kathi Aultman. She is a retired OBGYN, and she is currently a pro-life activist. And she's just doing so much for the kingdom of God. She's testified in front of Congress numerous times. And so I am just so excited to have her here today, and I can't wait for you all to meet her. So without further ado, let's go ahead and meet Kathi. Hi, Dr. Kathi. Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is a delight.
I would love for you to tell the listeners your story. You have such a powerful story, and so we'll just jump right into it.
So, right before I was supposed to enter medical school, I had met the guy I was going to marry, and I found that I was pregnant. And I was afraid that if I had the baby, I wouldn't be able to be a doctor. And so I decided to have an abortion. I also thought that if we got married because we had to, we'd get a divorce. And I was afraid of what people would think of me. So I had the divorce, went to medical school, decided to go into OBGYN. By the time I entered my OBGYN residency, I felt that abortion was a woman's right, and I wanted to help people, and one of the ways I could help people was by doing abortions. I excuse me. I learned how to do first trimester abortions in my program, and then went outside my program to learn how to do D&E abortions, which are second trimester abortions or dismemberment abortions, where we actually take the baby apart to remove the baby. I didn't see any difference between the chick embryos that I dissected in college and the a human fetus or embryo. As a matter of fact, the only time that I had any qualms about doing abortions was during my neonatal intensive care unit, when I realized that some of the babies we were trying to save were the same age as babies we were aborting. So after the first year of residency, I got my license, and instead of moonlighting at an emergency room, I moonlighted at an abortion clinic to make more money. I tried really hard to make that very painful procedure as painless as possible for my patients, but I never thought about the pain that the baby might be experiencing. And now we know that by 12 weeks, everything is there for them to feel pain. As a matter of fact, even by 8 weeks, they have the little sensory neurons in their face, and if their face is touched, they'll turn to it. It's called a rooting reflex. I continued to do abortions without any reservations during my pregnancy, and I did them all the way up until close to delivery. But something happened after I had my baby. When I went back to the clinic 6 weeks postpartum, there were 3 patients that I saw and that changed my mind. The first one, I had done like 3 or 4 abortions on myself, and I hadn't been doing them that long. And I went to the clinic manager and I said, I don't want to do this. She's using abortion as birth control.
Right.
And she said, well, you don't have that right. It's her right to do it, and you don't have any say so. You need to do it. And I looked at her and I said, yeah, but I'm the one doing the killing. So something must have changed in my mind at that point already. So I went ahead and did the abortion. Of course, she did not want birth control. The next patient came in with a friend. And after the abortion, the friend said, do you want to look at the tissue? And we did that sometimes. We would show them. And she said, no, I just want to kill it. And I thought, what did this baby do to you? It's not the baby's fault. I didn't say that to her. I said it to myself.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the day, there was a woman who, they had 4 children, and she and her husband felt that they couldn't afford to have a baby. So that's why she was there for an abortion. And she cried the entire time she was at the clinic. And after I did that abortion, I realized I could no longer kill babies just because they weren't wanted. As a matter of fact, I never did an abortion for the health of the mother or fetal anomaly. They were all elective. So I stopped at that point. I stopped doing abortions, but I still believed in abortion, and I still referred for abortion.
Yeah.
So I graduated, started in my practice. During my practice, I realized that I had these young girls who had unplanned pregnancies and difficult circumstances who were doing really well after they kept their babies.
Yeah.
And then I was seeing these other young women who had abortions and were dealing with the physical and psychological complications of abortion.
Right.
And that didn't fit with the feminist rhetoric that I had believed. So there was a little chink in the armor. I also became a Christian. However, that didn't change my mind on abortion. Still believed in abortion. But eventually, a Christian friend, and they accepted me even with my views. But once, this one guy had a relationship with me, he felt brave enough to say, Kathi, I know that you feel strongly about abortion, but would you read this article? Now, I have to preface this by saying that my father was a forward observer at the time that the first concentration camp was liberated during World War II. So I grew up with all those stories and pictures. And when I became a doctor, I could never understand how the German doctors could do what they did. As I thought about what I was doing and what they were doing, I suddenly realized the reason that I could do what I was doing and the reason they could do what they were doing was that we did not see our victims as human beings. That was the first time I saw myself as a mass murderer. And you're probably too young to remember Ted Bundy, but he was a serial killer who had either he was arrested around that time or they were getting ready to execute him. And I thought, I've killed a lot more people than Ted Bundy. And thankfully, I was surrounded by good Christian friends and ended up getting some counseling and healing. God healed me very quickly. Not long, and I told him, I said, whatever you want me to do, I'm willing. Of course, I really didn't want to have anything to do with abortion, but that's where he put me. I saw an email come through, had never seen an email like this. Got an email asking for volunteers to go to Washington to testify on partial birth abortion. And so I answered the email and said that I would go. That didn't work out, but immediately afterwards, I found myself testifying throughout the country, not only in front of legislatures, but also in court to try to defend bills that had passed and eventually ended up testifying before Congress.
Wow.
So then I had a little break. The partial birth abortion bill passed. Now I have to say, never give up hope, because I was convinced that was never going to pass. It seemed like whenever I testified, either in court or in front of legislatures, things never went well.
Mhm.
But all of a sudden, it passed. And
Yeah.
so I went back to just doing my regular practice.
Yeah.
In 2013, I developed severe problems with allergies. And in 2014, I had to actually stop practicing and kind of became a prisoner in my house because of all these environmental allergies.
Wow.
And just I had to, go out on disability at that point. So after about a year and a half, I finally felt better. And I remember praying and saying, Lord, please let me still do something important. And I got a call from my old office, and they said, this lady's been trying to get you for a week. Can we give you her number? And it was one of the, a U.S. senator, and she wanted me to go to Washington and testify on the heartbeat bill, which I did. And then I subsequently ended up testifying all over the place again, ended up joining Charlotte Lozier as an associate scholar and doing all kinds of things.
Oh, praise the Lord. That's amazing. God has used you for so many incredible things. And so that had to be so difficult for you to go in front of, Congress. What was that like? What was that process like for you? And how did God help you through that?
The first time, 20 years ago, it was very difficult. They were extremely hostile. As a matter of fact, one of them, I think it was the House, one of the representatives actually apologized to me for the behavior of his colleagues. Wasn't quite as difficult with the heartbeat bill, but I'll tell you, and if you don't have this, you need it. When I first started out, I had no backup. And I have to say the Catholic Church, the Catholic Bishops Conference, they were the ones that would help pay for my travel expenses to go. But I really didn't have anybody else to rely on or help me. So it really helped once I became a part of the Charlotte Lozier Institute. At least I had more access to information and help from others. But the big change for me was when I gathered a prayer team. And so I have a prayer team that I text or email before I'm going to do anything and get them to pray for me. Because prior to that time, I was just barraged with thoughts of, well, who do you think you are? You can't do this. You're not smart enough. You don't have the experience, Emotional things would blow up. So people near me who had any kind of emotional issues, right before Congress. I mean, I was getting ready to walk over to Congress, and this one thing blew up, and it sounded like it was this big emergency, and it was really nothing.
Wow.
So all that pretty much has stopped. If I remember to tell them, if it's something little, I might not text them, and then I get in trouble. So prayer coverage is huge.
Wow, absolutely, absolutely. So you mentioned that you came to know the Lord kind of later in life. How did that all come about?
So I'm actually a Methodist preacher's daughter. But I was thinking that at confirmation I'd really find God and get connected with God, and that didn't happen. It was kind of all rules. And even when I went to college, there was I went to chapel, and there was a priest there, an Episcopal priest, who I thought, gosh, I wish I had what he has. He seems like he has a relationship.
Right.
But I was a science major, got busy, didn't just kind of eventually became an atheist and decided that religion was just the opiate of the people. And then I remembered after I graduated, I worked at a Catholic parochial school for a year to make money to go to college.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as I was walking through the park one day and I picked up this pamphlet and it talked about having a personal relationship with Jesus. And I thought, well, this is wonderful if it were true. I put it back
Mhm.
down. Shortly after, I was driving in the country. I felt on top of the world because I had a car. My parents were letting me live in the basement for free if I put all my money towards medical school. I had a job,
Mhm.
and I was driving along, and I don't remember the question, but I remember my answer, and it
Mhm.
was, "Well, I don't want to give my life to Jesus today. I want to have some fun first." Because I
Mm.
considered myself a Miss Goody Two Shoes. So I wanted to have fun first. Well, it was 11 years before I guess I was open or God tapped me on the shoulder again. My girlfriend and I were in very bad marriages. As a matter of
Mhm.
fact, all the reasons I had to have the abortion ended up not really being valid. When I got
Yeah.
to medical school, I met all these women that had their children first and
Oh,
then went to medical school. So I didn't have to have an abortion in order to be a doctor.
yeah.
Um, I was worried that we'd end up with a divorce, and we ended
Mhm.
up with one anyway.
Yeah.
And I realized that the people that really mattered would have supported me. So my
Yeah.
girlfriend and I were both in these bad marriages,
Yeah.
and we decided that we just wanted to go back to church and hear the wholesome things that we heard as kids.
Yeah.
And we wanted to go to the Episcopal Church because it was really pretty. It was a beautiful building.
They are
But
beautiful.
we were both Methodists, and so we thought the church service started at 11
Mhm.
and the Episcopal services started at 10:30. So we missed it. So we went across to the little tiny Methodist church and started going there, and it was so comforting to
Mhm.
hear good wholesome things.
Mhm.
And one day the pastor uh, was talking about Abraham and talking about hearing a small still voice and having a God-sized hole in our hearts. And that resonated with me. And he said, if you write in your Bible today um, that you'll put God first in your life, you'll see a difference in a year. Now he didn't talk about Jesus or anything, but I went home and I wrote that in my Bible. And then I just felt like I was in this whirlwind and I didn't know what to think. Everything was topsy turvy. So I
Yeah.
went to the office the first time it was open and went to see the pastor. And after talking to me, he gave me two books: Josh McDowell's Evidence That Demands a Verdict. And he was the lawyer who went out to disprove Christianity and became converted. And C.S. Lewis's um, uh, evident no C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity. And at that point, I didn't even really believe that there was a historical Jesus who walked the earth. So after reading Josh McDowell's book, I believed, okay, yeah, it sounds like there really was a guy named Jesus who walked on the earth. And then when I read C.S. Lewis's book, he basically says either Jesus is who he said he is, or he's the biggest liar and lunatic, we've ever seen. And I thought, yep, that's true. And that's when I became a Christian.
Wow. Wow. Isn't that so amazing how God is so patient with us, and how God, even if we have these questions, even if we have these doubts, even if we have unbelief, God still is so patient and loving and caring to just show us the way and lead us to
Mhm.
Him. And, He doesn't judge us. And if someone's out there who may have questions and maybe doubt whether or not Jesus is real or if he ever actually existed, and he wants you to know that he's real and who he is. And so, wow, that's amazing. What an incredible testimony. God is. God is so good to do that. So, can you tell us what God has you working on right now and what God is doing in your life currently?
Actually, one thing that's interesting is out live action filmed a roundtable a while ago
Wow.
with abortionists, women
Hmm.
who had had abortions, abortion clinic workers,
Hmm.
and abortion survivors. And there's going to be an 8-part series uh, dealing with different aspects of that. And the first one just came out, and it's Dr. Levatino and me speaking with Claire Caldwell, and
Melissa Oden.
that's out right now. But the
Wow.
biggest thing that I've been concentrating on is the Amendment 4 in Florida.
Hmm.
There are multiple states that have amendments on their ballots regarding abortion, and they're very similar. They're very broad, and so and people in the past when these have come up, they've been passed because people don't understand what they really mean. So
Hmm.
ours basically says there shall be no government interference in abortion up until viability. Well, that
Hmm.
doesn't sound so bad until you realize, well, viability, that's like a 6-month pregnancy.
Yeah.
Most people, they kind of think, oh, well, first trimester, I don't want to tell somebody they can't do that. But this is 6 months. The thing is, they also say that unless there is a problem with the health of the mother, so
Hmm.
beyond beyond that point, if there's any kind of a health issue, they can have an abortion based on the recommendation of a healthcare provider. Now, that specifically does not say doctor. So,
Mm.
the companion piece to Roe v. Wade, they defined health.
Hmm.
And the reason this is so deceptive is health can be anything, including age or just emotional well being.
Yeah.
So, when I was doing abortions, we always had to have a reason for the abortion.
Hmm.
And if they didn't have one, if they just wanted the abortion, I would say, well, won't it bother you emotionally? And so they'd say yes, and they'd say, okay, emotional problems.
Hmm.
And that would be, the reason for the abortion. And so that could be the reason for an abortion all the way up to term. In Florida, right now, only physicians can perform an abortion, which is
Right.
important because it's important that whoever's doing the abortion can handle the complications that can occur.
Mhm. Right.
So, in the states that have passed these types of amendments, they have gone through and systematically removed all regulations regarding abortion.
Wow.
So, likely nurse practitioners, PAs, and who knows who else will be allowed to do abortions.
Right.
The other thing is that our amendment states that it will not it will not prevent notification of parents, but right now we not only have notification, we have parental consent. Parental consent is
Hmm.
not protected and will probably be considered an interference with abortion. The
Hmm.
other thing that we've seen in these other states is that eventually the state is sued and forced to pay for Medicaid abortions. So people don't realize that they actually will be funding abortions probably if this passes. And this is throughout the country going on.
Oh my goodness. It's just terrible. It's just horrible. Oh my God. Thank God for you for taking this stand and for, going in front of Congress and just sharing, the truth. And we definitely need it. Oh my word. And what can people do? What can people, is there anything? I mean, I know it matters, like, voting and all of that, but what can we do to try to?
They they need to talk to other people. They really need to open their mouths and tell people what, what this amendment really means, because people look at it and they say, oh yeah, there shouldn't be any government interference. It should be between the patient and her doctor. That's not really the case. It's between the patient and the abortion industry. And and people don't understand. The other thing they don't understand is medicine is highly regulated. It's had to be to protect patients. And so you take away all those regulations, and you've got a multi-billion-dollar money-making machine with no restrictions and no protections for women. So these amendments remove all protections for women. The other thing is, and I feel like it's important for the churches to do this. I think it's something like 50% of Christians are not registered voters, and of that, there's only a small number that vote. So the churches need to get people registered, and they need to make sure that they vote, and they need to be talking about it. But so often they don't want to get involved. They think it's political. Well, this is not political. This is a human rights issue. And we have a document. Basically, I forget if it's Liberties. I forget where the document is from, but it basically says no one is going to be their 501c3 status or their nonprofit status would not be affected by speaking out on this issue. They're not supposed to speak on, for political candidates and things like that. But something like this would not be affected, would not affect it. God woke me up at 4:30 in the morning the other morning, and he said to me, there is no neutral position on this. And if people do not fight against it, do not vote against it, if they just abstain, they will be complicit in the Holocaust to follow, and it will be a Holocaust. And there are people out there saying, oh, well, there aren't third trimester abortions. Yes, there are. Dr. Hearn does third trimester abortions. Some of these abortionists go to multiple states. So it does happen. And they admit that many of the abortions they do are elective. They're not for medical reasons. They're not for fetal indications, which I have to say, why are we discriminating against babies with disabilities? If the baby's going to die, right up to delivery or during the pregnancy, why not encourage the mom to take care of that baby for as long as she can? Right. That's where perinatal hospice is so wonderful, because they will come alongside women and counsel them and prepare them for what's going to eventually happen. And if the baby dies, then they can mourn for that baby. They don't have to keep it a secret that they aborted the baby. And so they can mourn openly. The women that I've seen that have done that versus women who have followed their doctor's advice and aborted, they do much better. I also have a sweet young friend whose parents were told that they had to abort her. She was going to be, she wouldn't survive and all this stuff. And of course, she's a very active, pro-life young woman, vibrant young woman now, who's fine.
Yeah.
She ended up in the NICU for a while, but she survived and she does well. And there are story after story of women who were told they needed to abort and didn't, and ended up with a normal baby, which is very scary. But again, even if the baby had been abnormal, why not allow that baby to have as much life as they can? I think that's much healthier for the woman. And then if their family circumstances are such that they cannot care for a disabled infant, there's adoption. And there actually are people out there who are willing to take care of babies that aren't going to live very long. As a matter of fact, one, I think when I was testifying before Congress, this woman caught me in the bathroom and said, I agreed to take care of this baby that was born with congenital defect. Her,
Right.
her mom couldn't take care of her. And she said, I was blessed because I was able to take care of her for the 3 months that she lived. And her mother was blessed because she didn't have to kill her child.
Yeah. So amazing. My sister-in-law was told when her third child was being when she was pregnant with him that he was going to have all of these issues. I can't remember exactly what the issues were, but the doctors did advise her to terminate the pregnancy. And we prayed, and he's completely fine. He's completely normal. He has no issues whatsoever. And even my own story, I mean, my grandmother was a victim of rape. She was just 12 years old, I believe, when she became
Mm.
pregnant. And, at that time, I'm sure abortion wasn't really an option. But nowadays, that's something that people they feel very strongly that if something like that happens, then abortion is okay. And I kind of have to disagree because I wouldn't be here. My mother wouldn't be here. My children wouldn't be here. There's so many generations and so many people that would have been affected by that one life. So, abortion, kills generations. So it's just so important that people realize that it's not just, a fetus. It's a human being, it's a human life, and it's so many human lives, and just how much better off the mother and the child will be if they choose life. And so, wow. Yeah.
And the thing is that this is the only circumstance where we punish the victim. We
Right.
execute the victim. You know,
Yes. Yeah.
why should it make a difference how a child was conceived? If
Right.
they're a human being, then
Yeah.
they should be protected, even if they're conceived in rape. And the
Yeah.
thing is that, especially for really young girls,
Hmm.
going through the abortion is like another rape, and why, and they don't understand why you're killing their baby, and it's
Right.
very um, it's
Traumatic.
just
Yeah.
very, very distressing for them. The other thing, and this was the last thing that God worked on me about, was cases of rape. And until I met a woman who was viciously raped, and she and her husband chose to have the baby, and he's the light of her life. And she wouldn't have any children had she chosen to abort him, because she ended up having to have I think she ended up with a C-section hysterectomy, because she was so damaged by the had so much internal damage and so many operations because of the rape.
Oh dear.
And so that began to change my opinion. And then when I learned all the different options for adoption, I
Mhm.
was amazed. These open adoptions now, women get to watch videos of the different families that want to adopt their baby, and they
Mhm.
can choose which family they want their baby to go to. They can choose if they want to have any contact or not. So
Yeah.
it's not the old story of, oh, you give your baby up and you never know where they went, and if they had a
Right.
bad life, or you know
Right.
anything like
Exactly.
that. So that if a woman can't handle keeping the baby, there she has other options.
Thank you so much for sharing all of this, because it's so important that women know that there is a way, especially African American women. And, we know that there is just a push to basically eliminate a lot of these babies, a lot of these African American babies. And so it's just so important that women know that you have a choice, and that there's so many families out there who would absolutely love to take care of your child. You have options, and that if you have had an abortion, God loves you and He forgives you, and He can heal you. So you don't have to carry that with you for the rest of your life. And then maybe you can also help, join the fight, and help those who really need to hear your story and use your voice for the good. Well, thank you so much, Kathi, for being here today. Where can we reach you? Is there where can we find you and all that, and keep up with everything that God is doing in your life?
If someone wants to reach me, they can reach me through the Charlotte Lozier Institute.
Okay.
They can get a message to me. And just
Oh,
look on Facebook or
yeah.
whatever your social media is. You probably find me.
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
look.
well, thank you again so much for being here. It's been such an honor and just such a blessing. So.
Well, it was really wonderful talking to you and hearing your story as well. It's just amazing, and I'm excited about what you're doing. It's just really cool.
Thank you. Well, thank you guys all so much for listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and God bless you.